Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Hello.
Attorney Wilson, I sent some of my changes to that policy this afternoon. You probably didn't have a chance to see it, but I was planning to show that to the rest of the group today, to the undocumented student policy.
Yeah, I had a chance to look at it.
Okay.
Okay.
Any thoughts? I wrote it and I didn't proofread it afterwards, which is usually my best practice. So if you caught any typos, I'm gonna take a look at it now myself again.
Okay. I do have the link ready to screen share when you're ready.
Okay. I don't think I see any other board members yet, right? So I was just gonna give folks a
But we
minute.
are streaming on YouTube, just FYI.
Okay. All
There's
right.
Mr. Walker,
Here's
and I
Mr.
know
Walker. Okay.
Mr. Wilson's joining. I know Ms. Brody's joining. Let me see who else is.
Okay, I think we'll just get started in the interest of time. It's 5:02. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this policy committee meeting. Today is Monday, November 3rd, and we'll jump right into our agenda. My name is Ruth Fortune, and I am the chair of the policy committee. The first item on the agenda is the contract approval for Pullman and Comley. This actually is pulled from today's meeting. We'll discuss this contract further in the Finance Committee meeting, so there is no further action required on our part. Next item is the second reading and adoption of the protection of undocumented students. Christina, you're welcome to share the policy, or I could alternatively share. Is this okay, perfect, with the red line. Super, thank you. This is the policy based on how we reviewed it last time. I made a few changes that I thought we could discuss. I'm not sure why equals that didn't pick, but instead of calling it protection of undocumented students, I thought about equal protection of students regardless of immigration status, because it seems to be more broad. Also, we're trying to protect all students under this policy. I think it also hopefully will attract less bias coverage, if you will. But I welcome, feedback on this change. And if you scroll down, I can just highlight my changes further. So here, it had any request by ICE to a district personnel to visit a school site. I added to visit or enter a school site because they might just be at the door trying to gain entry for whatever reason. And then I added the final two sentences to be more explicit, that unless there is a judicial warrant from a federal judge and such warrant has been verified by counsel, the superintendent shall not allow ICE or any immigration enforcement agents onto school grounds. I've learned that ICE warrants, unlike judicial warrants, there's ICE warrants, so I wanted to distinguish between the two. So ICE warrants, unlike judicial warrants, are merely agency directives and shall not serve as a basis for permit for entry. This is where I meant, so I did have a typo. Shall not serve as a basis to permit entry by ICE agents. Sorry, to permit entry by ICE agents. Do you want me to make that change, Christina?
Sorry, I couldn't find my mute. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I made the change to the shared document. It should reflect on here, but I can just recirculate after too. It should automatically populate though, later. And the final addition I made is that in accordance with the foregoing, the superintendent in consultation with the board shall develop clear protocols with step-by-step procedures for principals, teachers, and security staff if immigration officials request access to school grounds or student information. And then this will flow to the memo that was provided by the superintendent. And I have some feedback for that memo, but I can take that back with you, Attorney Wilson, separately and address that memo. So I'll open it up to discussion to see if anyone has any feedback, concerns, comments on this policy.
Oh, I tried to raise my hand.
Okay,
I thought I
sorry, I
did.
did not see that. Go ahead, Board Member Walker.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. My only feedback is with the change you made, which I agreed with. I'm going to ask, um, would it be more precise to insert administrative warrants to really spike out that the ICE warrants are administrative warrants as opposed to judicial warrants? Am I inaccurate in what I'm saying?
I'm not opposed to saying ICE warrants or administrative warrants or anything of the sort. It's just, I'm fine with that.
So you can keep the ICE. I guess I'm
You're breaking up, and I'm not sure, is it me or is it for everyone
let's
else?
say ICE
He's breaking up.
administrative.
You're breaking up.
It's him.
Is it me?
Yes.
Okay, then I'm gonna move again because I think I'm in a dead zone. So I'll move to another zone. But if you can hear me now, I'm just suggesting adding administrative after ICE, essentially.
Okay, so ICE administrative warrants.
Yep, that's it.
Okay, I'm not opposed to it. I'll double check on like the technicality of that. But I think you're right. Yeah. Board Member Brody?
Yes, I'm trying to understand what adding that does is like and I know probably the listening audience doesn't get it either, that administrative language. Like what does it do, not do?
I don't think the administrative word makes a difference. I think it's more so that ICE could issue its own warrants, and I think it is right that those will be considered administrative warrants as opposed to judicial warrants, and we don't want to abide by those. We would want a warrant from a federal judge, as opposed to just these warrants that ICE can issue for any reason, given that they generally disregard the rule of law. But I can look into it further or tag you in, Attorney Wilson, see if you have any thoughts on that one word difference, or also if you have thoughts more generally on these proposed changes.
Yeah, I think that the technical term would be the administrative warrant term. So I get that recommendation. There are agency directives and or administrative warrants, but I think that's what they're termed, administrative warrants. I do have another comment
Sure.
about the first part of the sentence that starts with unless there is a judicial warrant from a federal judge and such warrant has been verified by counsel. Just reconciling that with the directives given by the superintendent. Just want to flag, and we could come up with another word there, but there's like for instance, Director Roberts, former chief of police, has also been identified by the superintendent as someone that could come and verify a warrant, who's not a lawyer, as well as former law enforcement officer Peter Bergenholz has also been identified as someone from the superintendent that could come and verify a warrant in addition to myself. So I just wanted to kind of flag in that space that there's additional people in the district, specifically the three of us that have been tagged by the superintendent to come do that verification piece. So I just wanted to kind of make sure we're reconciling the language in this policy with what the memo actually indicates.
Yes, you're correct. The memo and, action steps under 2B, it does say Staff Attorney Ed Wilson, Director of Labor Relations Peter Birkenholtz, and Director of Security Darrell Roberts. So two things that I think. One, I'm reluctant to name specific names in the policy because these people can change. So I wonder if it should be counsel and other designee by the superintendent, because the policy is, supposed to be able to remain even like we've done in other policies, right? Instead of naming specific people, we're naming specific roles within the district. So your thoughts on that? Because I wrestled with that a little bit. I'm also, because it's specifically judicial warrants, I don't know, should it be counsel that's reviewing them? If it's not you specifically, an attorney from one of the two law firms that we retain for various services.
Yeah, I love the idea of this, the council and or designee of the superintendent. I will say, particular to the names that I've shared out, and it could change when we're looking about longevity of a policy. I could appreciate the point you're making. The other two staff members we identified, again, one former chief of police in Hartford who's very fluent in what a warrant looks like and how to look for a warrant that is a federal judge signed warrant. And both of the individuals I named also have longstanding experiences with ICE just by virtue of the work that they did as police officers. So those two individuals, based on the significant background they have, absolutely have the experience necessary to fulfill the ability to look at a warrant and determine its legal sufficiency. But it could change, right? There may come a time where the superintendent, and this is where I think the language designee kind of captures it. It could come a time where the superintendent chooses that just to be a responsibility of council.
Okay, so you think by counsel or other designee of the superintendent?
Or other designee of the superintendent.
Okay. All right, I made that quick change. That seems reasonable to me because, right, you could be on vacation or out or tied up in something else. So it's a good idea to have more than one person who can do this. Does that answer some of the comments you had, Board Chair Brody?
Well, I'm still a little bit concerned because if some ICE warrants administratively or otherwise are not legally binding and such, I'm wondering, like, I definitely want us to be clear as possible that we want to make sure it's a valid judicial warrant signed by a federal judge and that have not expired. So I don't know how do we say it like that, or I don't know.
Attorney Wilson, do you think this captures that unless there's a judicial warrant from a federal judge and such warrant has been verified by counsel or other designee of the superintendent? Does that capture that it needs to be an actual judicial warrant? I even added federal judge because, I don't know, it's immigration. I don't want some type of state court warrant that they get from a random attorney somewhere. A random judge somewhere.
Yeah, I think those ads are very intentional, right? So the federal judge ad, I think, is a very good ad, because that further separates the distinction between a federal judicial warrant versus administrative warrant. So that as adding something else the person reviewing the warrant could be looking for. So I like that ad. I think we capture. I think this does capture kind of like looking for the differences between the two. And we could further build that out to the extent that we don't think these are clear in the regulations to follow.
Okay.
Do we think it's worth adding that have not expired? Or is it overkill?
We could absolutely add it.
Okay. Thank you.
Board Member Mills?
Yeah, on this topic, all that's great, but I guess this is more of a question on how the district handles it. Would the designees be required to be stated in advance somewhere in writing? Or is it one of those like the superintendent's not in town? I don't know, you already have a list of people, but like, is there any way that we could codify that list of people, not in this bylaw, but just in general, like as a district-wide memo or something? Just so that we know who like, essentially, can we write them down and make it so that that's a real thing, being a designee in this case?
I can respond to that.
Go ahead, Attorney Wilson.
So we have done that in the context of memos from the superintendent. So we've issued two superintendent level memos on this topic. Dr. Leslie Torres Rodriguez issued one that identified myself, Director Roberts, and Director Bergenholtz as the individuals that will come to the school. Dr. Townsell has issued an updated memorandum that doubles down on that directive. Those memos have been shared out with our building administrators. And our building administrators were asked to turnkey that information to their staff. So at this point, as a school district, we should be very clear on who the identified individuals are that are tasked with coming out to a school in the situation that an ICE agent shows up at our doorstep.
Awesome, thank you.
I don't think I see any other hands up, but I want to make sure everybody gets a chance to participate. I should also add that a reporter from the Connecticut Mirror did reach out to the district about this policy after we discussed it during the first reading at the last board meeting. And it made me quite nervous because, I want this policy in place to protect our students. I also don't want to call more attention onto ourselves because we're dealing with the administration that is intentionally cruel and has complete disregard for the rule of law. So, my hope is that we can really fine tune this here and get language that we're really comfortable with and get some consensus, and then we can just vote on it at the next board meeting. Or if we think we want to make more modifications, let's just table it, have another round of discussion in committee before we bring it to the whole board. Happy to bring on immigration advocates to the next meeting if we want more input. I did make these changes based on feedback from immigration advocates. But, I'm always open to more feedback. I know personally, I would have preferred to not have access granted, period, regardless of a judicial warrant or not. But I have been told that we would essentially be asking our staff to disobey federal law and put them at risk of facing some type of, charges. So I'm bringing that up for discussion again because it hasn't escaped me. I would prefer, absolute language, but I understand also the limitations of not having such absolute language in here that says we're just not going to allow access, period. And Attorney Wilson, you're probably just not pleased to hear this, so feel free to comment. I know we've had this discussion months ago, I think before the inauguration, when I tried to sort of discuss what should we do as a district. So feel free to chime in.
I think you've captured the points. I don't have anything to add at this time. I think we've done a good job of balancing what we know to be our legal requirements, and then making sure that we're creating a school system that's supportive of our students that fall in this category.
Thank you. Okay, so I believe that as a board, we'll want to be somewhat involved with the protocols and the step-by-step procedures. I did review the memo that the superintendent sent out. I think that memo does need to be revised based on this policy once it's adopted, because this is certainly more strict and more explicit as to when to allow entry and what that process is. My feedback generally, I'm happy to share that memo with, on my screen if it would help other people to see it. Is that something that you all would find helpful if I just share that memo that went out really quickly? I'll take.
I mean, I've seen it multiple times, the old one and the new one, but
Yeah, I
Okay.
feel like we're good. I believe it
Okay.
exists.
Okay, all right. My only feedback in terms of when we're rewriting this memo, I guess that's more to you, Attorney Wilson. The action steps sort of just, list, A, B, C. I think it would help to break down the action steps based on someone trying to gain entry into the school or a request for documentation, because those are two very different things. And then sort of spell out the procedures based on these two different ways of them trying to get access. Because I think the physical entry into schools is far more concerning. I mean, they're both very concerning, but the physical entry is when we really want to push back when there's physical safety at risk. And the request for documentation, we still also need a really strong procedure, but I think bifurcating the two in the step-by-step protocols would be helpful. That's my thoughts on it.
I feel like one more thing that just jumped out to me as we're looking at this. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
No, go ahead.
Okay. That same sentence we've been talking about, unless there's a judicial warrant that ends with the superintendent shall not allow ICE or other immigration enforcement agents onto school grounds. The onto school grounds, to the extent that we're putting forth a policy that requires the superintendent to do something,
Mhm.
the last part of that sentence that talks about the superintendent should not allow ICE or other immigration agents onto school grounds, that does concern me. Only because I think there's a difference between allowing them to access a school, and gain entry to a school versus them just walking on school property. I just want to flag the situation where it could be argued that there's some violation of policy because ICE came on school grounds but was not allowed access to a building based on not having the proper judicial warrant.
Board Member Brody?
with that said, I immediately think of like parents who are, I like to think of our school as a safe space, our property of our school as a safe space, at least while school is in session. So I'm thinking of how could we word the policy, our procedures, or what have you, in a way that parents that are gathering, waiting for dismissal, aren't targeted. While they could be targeted for off our school grounds, how could we make our families feel comfortable that on our school grounds, and maybe we can't, but if it is possible, I'm wondering.
Yeah, no, I see both of the points that, Attorney Wilson and Board Chair Brody brought up. Yeah, I think I probably should change that from onto school grounds to specifically into school buildings, or define what school grounds are in a more narrow fashion. I don't think we can protect parents who are standing in line to pick up their kids or dropping off their kids, because they're like physically, right? There's no way to stop them from just going and grabbing someone as they've been doing. I think where we do have the ability to protect kids is when they're inside our buildings, because we can literally refuse to allow them to enter the buildings. I don't want to give people a false sense of security. I don't want to have a policy that says we're going to protect you on all school grounds, but really we mean in the building. So I'd rather have it be more narrowly defined to include the spaces that we actually know we can protect, versus trying to be more broad and fail at doing so. That's kind of where I lean, and that's how if I was still undocumented that I would want to know specifically what the school can and cannot do for me.
But aside from that, and it may not be this meeting, do we have a conversation around that part? Right? While we're making this policy for inside the school, do we set expectations or expectations for our property?
Yeah, maybe the
Maybe that's another
protocols.
conversation for another day, but I do want to, hopefully we can discuss that at some point.
Yeah, I think maybe in the protocols, that's where we sort of lay this out too, in terms of like, you know, essentially the curtilage of the school or, you know, premises right outside of the building of the school. That could be a place to address that. But I think, Attorney Wilson, what do you think about changing that from, you know, other immigration enforcement agents into school buildings?
I like that change because we know we would have to allow you access to the building,
Right.
right? There's like a buzzing in, so it's a lot
Right.
more control
Right.
in that space.
Right. Okay. All right. I'll make that quickly. Board Member Darcel Ledger.
Thank you so much, and good evening, everyone. So, you know, I'm thinking about, you know, the word, you know, the language, you know, school grounds, school property, perhaps, because as an educator, you know, some teachers take kids out, you know, the younger children, if you will, out to recess, and that's outside. And there's nothing saying that, you know, they can't jump the fence or, you know, find their way onto the grounds when children are at recess. So, because they're not entering the building, not necessarily. So I think we need to, and also another, that's what the other concern that I have is with the language of, you know, during the school day, because we do have events on the weekend. We do have sport, you know, whether it's basketball games, soccer matches, volleyball games, things like that, that take place after school hours, or after academic hours, if you will. So I think that may need to be looked at as well. So that's what I wanted to add.
Thank you. So with respect to the comments in order, I go back to practicality. If students are outside in the playground and ICE agents want to just raid the playground, we really don't have a way of protecting those kids during that short period of time. I think it would be misleading to say we're going to prevent them from going into an open playground if they can just go and grab a child. That's just the really tragic reality that we live in. So I don't see how we can reflect that in policy unless we decide as a school we're going to go and essentially gate all of our playgrounds and lock them so that you'd need to be permitted entry even into the playgrounds, which right now I know is not the case in at least most of the schools that I've been to. So I think practically we just can't actually do that, even if it's in a policy. And I think it would be bad form to have a policy that we know we cannot implement with complete fidelity. So that's with respect to the first comment. And then secondly, about the day part, I don't think the actual policy, I just quickly did a word search. The policy itself doesn't mention anything about the school day. It talks about not being allowed into school buildings. There's no references to time. And my understanding is whenever there is school function occurring, there's security present and they're buzzing people in. So that would cover whenever there are students in the building. But I will pause there and see if Attorney Wilson, you have anything you wanted to add.
No, not at this time.
Attorney Misrak, did you want to add anything to this or?
No, thank you. Just been listening to the comments and I would agree with all of the changes you've proposed and the clarifications that Ed has added as well.
Okay. Do you know how the city police would be interacting with ICE? I know this varies from city to city, And I know just within the district, as I've been going around within, just the greater Hartford area, I know different police forces approach this differently. What is the Hartford police stance if we were to be in a bind and somehow they're called because ICE agents are pressuring our folks to enter our buildings? Do you know what the police's stance is in Hartford?
Well, I think that in the past, our district has worked closely with the city in those types of situations. And so if there was a need for the police to come out to assist, they would do so. I believe that is still the practice.
Okay. I think it's worth us having explicit conversations with the city or, the police department to ensure that we're on the same page. Because I know there are other school districts where those police forces explicitly say, we're not going to interfere. There's just nothing we will do. And I would just want us to know what they will and will not do. And if there's any way to get them to be cooperative and supportive to our students. Because I don't know that I know the answer to that for sure.
Can I add one piece to that?
Sure.
I don't want to talk out of turn. I see
No, go ahead.
Chairperson Brody.
Go ahead,
Okay.
Attorney Wilson.
So there's, and just kind of piggyback on a point that you were making earlier, there's parts of this policy that have to be reconciled with that we're not a law enforcement agency, right? We're an educational school district that's here to educate children. But this policy gets us closer to making sure that our students feel safe. But what I want to flag here in this conversation is simultaneously, because this becomes a collective community responsibility. So I could tell, the team here that, our team does have weekly meetings with Hartford Police Department. I don't want to speak to what their philosophy on the interaction with ICE is, but I could tell you that we have a weekly touch point with them. And we've also we've had a meeting. I personally had a meeting with ICE just to kind of like level set on what expectations are. So we have been intentional about having conversations with individuals in the community, to kind of at an aim to have a better understanding as we've developed policies and memos on this particular issue, because not everything we're going to be able to capture in a policy that's grounded in things we could actually do. So I just want to kind of like flag that we've also been intentional about having conversations outside of what we know we can accomplish in a policy as an educational school district that's not law enforcement officials.
Thank you for that. Board Chair Brody?
Yeah, because when you mentioned the Hartford Police Department, because I know the two head of security folks that we lean on and rely on for the district are former members of the Hartford Police Department. So it was something said in our last meeting that did not make me feel confident in the sense of them speaking of ICE, at least one of them, in like they're reasonable people. But it is encouraging that Attorney Wilson has said that he has had those direct conversations, setting the expectation, from the school district. Because I wasn't confident after the last meeting, because we've been seeing everything but reasonable behavior by ICE. So I'm just happy that conversation is happening and they're understanding from us and not thinking that they'll ever act in good faith. So I just wanted to say that.
Thank you. Along those same lines, I'll add that Attorney Wilson shared with me at our pre-policy planning meeting, the planning meeting to the planning meeting for the general meeting, that the district has also partnered with a really well-respected immigration attorney in Hartford to do consultation with students and parents regarding immigration matters, which I think was incredibly proactive on their part. And, you know, I happen to know that attorney, and she's just a really fierce advocate for immigrants and families. Has a team that speaks, you know, she herself speaks Spanish in addition to English and some other languages. She even has staff members who speak Haitian Creole and Portuguese and other common languages spoken by our students and their families. So I felt that was really, really incredible. And we're being very thoughtful as to how we let families know that that is something that's available to them. And she's meeting with them to do free consultations, right, Attorney Wilson? That's what you said. And I can tell you, immigration attorneys generally do not do free consultations. You pay for the consultation, and you're paying, you know, for every minute that you're spending with them. So it's a huge, huge service that we're able to offer to those families.
And that's accurate. Free consultations, and they're going to be weekly, starting in mid-November.
So I was very pleased to hear that, and pleased to know that it's someone who I know does really, really good work. I don't think I see any other hands up related to this policy. So thank you all for your time. I think I just need to make one more tweak. We said that we would add not expired. Such warrant has been verified is by counsel and other designee of the superintendent and is not expired, right? Something like that. Does that capture it all before I move on? I don't think that makes sense the way I just added it. Anyhow, I'll revise that again and make sure that it's finalized before we vote at the next meeting. Next items are two first readings, one for food services, no charging policy. So I know this came up in prior meetings. We currently do not charge any students for their meals, breakfast or lunch. And this is a policy to be adopted from our CABE model policies to reflect that we're abiding by the protocols and procedures that we've been following all along. And this does stem from a legal requirement for schools to have this policy. And I'll stop there and see if Attorney Wilson, if you want to add anything, and then take questions.
I think you captured it. We do have the subject matter expert on the call, Elaine Gagliata. If you could give additional context to how we landed here.
Sure. So every school system has to have this policy in writing and has to distribute it to parents and students at the beginning of every school year. What's different for us is that we are what the state calls CEP, a CEP district. So we don't charge any of our students for meals at any of our schools. So it seems like this isn't necessary, but it is for other reasons. If a student was to want to buy a second meal, or if they wanted to buy some of our a la carte items, they can if they have the money, but we don't allow them to charge. If students or even staff, as you see further down, adult meals incur a debt to the department, we are not able to then wash that away. It has to be somehow paid before the end of every school year. And so I think all CEP districts don't get into letting any students or adults charge, so that we don't have to be in a position where now those debts aren't paid. You cannot use funds from the department in order to clear those debts. It would have to come from the board, or I think a long time ago, principals would have there was like a charge to principal, but that was back when we charged for meals. So it's really kind of just a formality, and also to put in writing that, there's no shaming students. You can't say that a student can't have a meal or give them an alternate meal if they didn't have money. So basically it's really just a a simple way of saying that we give each student one free breakfast and one free lunch every day, and they can't charge anything beyond. They can purchase it if they have cash, but it can't be charged and go into a negative balance. And that's about it.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Any questions on this policy? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the next policy for first reading, which is a collection of policies. Here is all of those policies. They're relatively short. You know, if you want to take a minute to quickly glance at the list, if anything jumps at you as you want to look at it more closely, we did get the full list of policies. I know I have it. I think everyone else on this call received the full list. I hope they did. Christina, please let me know if not. But that's
Yes, but I will admit I did send that today. So, and it is also attached in board docs, but this is a first reading, so they can, this is the long PDF that they received.
yeah. Okay. So then maybe for homework for next time is before, you know, when we're reviewing this again ahead of the second reading, if there's anything you think we should be changing, please let me know. I know I personally want to review more closely the board superintendent relationship. Since Attorney Wilson, you pointed out, there is another policy that we pulled out that we'll look at individually instead of as part of the lump sum. Okay,
Board Member Fortune, can I give some additional context here?
sure, of course, please.
In the last CABE audit, they flagged for us a number of policies that haven't been updated in X amount of years. Some hadn't been updated in 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. And that was actually kind of identified in that CABE audit is kind of like, you know, we have some policies, essentially some archaic policies, and we need to do some work on kind of like making sure those policies are up to date. What we were intentional about this past summer was going through all our policies and actually flagging for subject matter experts to kind of look at the policies, and that's how we landed at kind of like policies that needed to be updated. But then there was a large portion of policies that hadn't been updated in some time, but based on the review of internal staff members, they didn't need any updates. Or weren't immediately flagged for updates. So that beget the conversation about you know, a process in which we could flag policies that have or are reviewed by the board. That way, when we look at our policies, it doesn't look like policies are just not being reviewed in some kind of predictable cadence. That brings us here where we have a number of policies that are rather short policies that have been looked at, that we're putting in front of the board, that have essentially no change to them, but have been reviewed and determined that they're still applicable based on the content of the policies.
Thank you for sharing that, Attorney Wilson. Any other questions on this policy? I think I saw one hand up. Board Member Darcel Ledger?
Thank you so much. One question I have is with regards to the smoking in facilities. Does this particular policy, if you will, or section specify or go into detail whether it's electronic cigarettes or vaping, or is that something different?
It does not. I can read it to you right now because I have it in front of me. It's just two sentences. It says, it shall be the policy of the Board of Education that no one shall smoke or chew tobacco inside any school system facility. In addition, students are not to smoke or chew tobacco while on school bus or while attending any school system activity, whether or not on school system grounds. And this was last updated in 2004. I'm not even sure. Were there e-cigarettes in 2004?
Yeah,
I have no idea.
Yeah, see, that's the thing, because I feel, and I'm not an attorney, I don't even play one on TV, but language concerns me. You know what I mean? Because you don't want to give anyone any, they could say, well, I'm not smoking this, or I'm not, this is not, because it is something different, So what didn't exist back in 2004 that exists now, perhaps that needs to be updated.
I'm not opposed to adding vaping to this. I don't know if technically vaping is considered smoking or not. Frankly, I'm not sure, but if we want to add more current language to include other things that we know students are using. I have heard of other districts. I don't think in Hartford, but I've heard of other districts where like vaping is an issue, and like the flavored e-cigarettes or whatever kids are using these days have been a huge issue, but I'm not sure if that's an issue for us in Hartford, but it doesn't hurt to update the policy if we think it's going to strengthen it. Attorney Wilson, do you have any thoughts on that, or anyone else from the district who has, expertise in this area?
We could absolutely update it and add that, as well as any other policies that the board flags are not clear.
Okay. May I leave that revision to you, Attorney Wilson?
Absolutely.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Board Chair Brody?
Thank you.
And probably to see in some of our other policies, I don't know, I've attended many meetings for advocating for families in other districts. So I don't know if it was our jurisdiction or not, but I know it's spelled out, but it was spelled out more in the discipline policy. Like all the things. Vaping, even like vape cartridges, like all of that is included. So it may be included somewhere else that you could look and pull from, because it's explicit, but I believe it might be in another policy.
Yeah, there's interesting. It does reference 5136, which is the smoking policy. So maybe there's more there.
Yeah, probably that's why it's listed
Yeah,
there.
I don't have 5136 in front of me, so I can't quite tell you.
Next
I
time.
also, sorry, was someone about to?
No, I was saying next time, like you previously stated.
I do know that in speaking with Christina, that CABE is planning to make our policies and protocols more accessible through an online portal of sorts. So it'll be much easier for us as we're reviewing policies or even want to look at policies to be able to find them in a more accessible way. So I'm looking, it's a sad sentence to say out loud, I'm looking forward to these things being more accessible, to just look through them and search through them for us and anyone else who's so curious to find what they say.
I think, through you, Madam Chair, I think Ms. Santiago has heard me enough times on that is being worked on. Because I'm finding in it, looping you, and it say this policy, and I'm like, no, I think we're doing a huge undertaking to make things way better. To your point.
Yes. If you want to real quick, Kay will be hosting our policies. They're almost done, they said. So we're almost ready to go live, but they will be hosting them in a manner that it's an individual policy, so people can easily access an individual policy versus the long PDF that we have now.
Hopefully it's searchable too by key terms.
It is searchable, and it has a Google feature to translate the policies.
Oh, nice. Awesome. All right.
Oh,
And I don't think you mentioned, Attorney Wilson. The other thing that we will add to these policies too is like another sort of tag it for when do we want to go and review it again? Is it 2 years from now, 5 years from now? Just so that we trigger essentially this ongoing review process and calendar it for the next review, essentially. I'm sorry, did you mention that and I somehow missed it?
No, you
You
got
didn't?
it.
Okay.
You got
Okay.
it. And actually, we have a policy coming up that does exactly that we're going to ask the board to approve, that captures that predictable cadence in which we review and update policy.
We'll have a policy about the policies that we have. So getting into the weeds here. Okay, so that concludes the first reading agenda. Moving on to our discussion agenda, bylaw 9321.2 is a request by, I believe, Board Member Mills to move the consent agenda. Board Member Mills, can I tag you in to explain the rationale behind this request and how you anticipate this will improve the order during meetings?
I have been so ready to talk about this for like a year. I originally emailed
Merry
Lori.
Christmas,
I'm
early
so
gift from me to
I am
you.
so pumped about this. I mean, it's nothing crazy. So realistically, you all know that I like railing on the amount of time we spend doing things. But one thing that I have found to be true is that one, we do the consent agenda after the business agenda, and there have been multiple times where I've seen people who want to present or who want to be available if there are questions asked, who wait our entire meeting for the consent agenda, and then we just consent agenda the thing, so they never. It's a waste of their time to be there. But also something that we've discussed on occasion is the idea of if we want to talk about things, we can't have that thing on the consent agenda. So in order to talk about it, we would remove that thing and add it to the business agenda. So it makes a lot more sense if we have the capability of having the consent agenda first, so that we can then move things into the business agenda. Also, just an important sort of clarification, this doesn't actually move the consent agenda. It gives us the ability to put it wherever we want in leadership meetings. Technically, if we wanted to right now, we could vote to move the consent agenda before the business agenda, but we'd have to do that every meeting. So I think that it just makes a little bit more sense for us to give that flexibility so that we can decide during leadership. But I think this might just be a pretty easy way of making our proceedings a little bit more efficient and less cumbersome. The end.
Thank you for that explanation. Do we have any questions?
I don't get it still, but
Currently
I don't get how it would make us be more efficient.
I mean, so currently in the bylaws, we have to do the consent agenda after the business agenda. In order to do that any differently, we'd have to vote every single meeting. And so personally, I think that we should have the ability to sort of create our agenda as we like to see it. But also, like, that has definitely happened on occasion where we get to the consent agenda and we want to move things out of it and add it to the business agenda. So it makes a little bit more sense to me to have the consent agenda first, move things out, and then just add them to the business agenda, therefore just then going into the business agenda. So, yeah.
Board Member Walker?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I agree with Board Member Mills that on boards that I've served on, the best practice is to have the consent agenda up top, because essentially you're asking people to, if the things we all agree on, we can all say yay burly and keep it moving. And that's what, to a certain degree, what the consent agenda is for. What I would ask beyond the moving, which I would agree with, is also let's lay flat whether contracts should go in or out. I would say I would kind of not have contracts in a consent agenda. They're the most frequent thing that gets bumped out of a consent agenda. I'm suggesting if we didn't have contract in consent agenda, it would be more smooth sailing and you just get through it, and contracts will get whatever time they need.
Thank you. Board Member Darcel Ledger?
Thank you so much. I disagree with, I don't have a problem with having the consent agenda moved ahead, However, I do disagree with having, not having contracts in the consent agenda, because there are some contracts that are simply contract continuation where they are you know, we've already had the contract, it's been going on, but just to continue it to the end of the school year or June, you know, June 30th of the school, you know, of the calendar year, the fiscal year rather. So I don't, and also we do discuss in detail and go over every contract in committee, but what I would like to see is instead of having the contracts taken out of consent agenda, as you know, as I believe it has been done, but to make it a regular, you know, regular practice is every item that is named, you know, as we're naming the consent agenda items, just give a little, you know, this is the contract or this is, you know, this is the service that's being provided, but not to go into, you know, very much detail. That's all I have.
Thank you. Board Member Walker, did you want to respond?
Yeah, I could be open to what Board Member Darrell Ludger is saying. If we could spike out, as she's suggesting, in consent, someone would spike out, this is in consent because ... And if folks are good with it, then you also keep it moving. But that would at least let the public that's viewing the monthly meeting understand why a particular contract, what it is, and why it doesn't need any further discussion. So that spiking out could potentially serve a purpose.
I'm trying to raise.
Oh, yeah,
Madam
go
Chair.
ahead. Yeah, I don't see the hand, but go ahead.
I was
Kimberly.
I was pressing everything, but I couldn't find it for some reason. So the possibility for a contract, every board member does not sit on every committee. So while we think we thoroughly flush out everything in committee, every board member doesn't sit in every committee. So I think it would be, I personally over the years have always, I won't vote for a consent agenda that has a contract in it. I just won't. But if we think that a item is going to possibly have a question, it shouldn't even be in the consent agenda. So that's probably is either or, like, and that can change, you know, month to month. It could be one that we knew we all were there, but then it could be something that came up between the committee meeting and the board meeting. So we have to think. I mean, I was okay with saying I'm just not voting for it because it's in, you know, the consent. But if most members are satisfied with them doing their due diligence and knowing you're not in that committee, but it possibly were some items there that involve some contracts. But if the possibility of a question, then why even be in consent?
Thank you. Board Member Mills, did you want to respond or share any other comments?
Yeah, I just think that all of that is valid, but has limited to do with this that I'm proposing. This is really just saying that we're allowed to put the consent agenda first. I don't actually have any strong opinions on whether or not contracts go on the consent agenda. My understanding of the consent agenda, it's just that things that we all sort of agree upon and don't want to spend the time discussing. But that might not be how you guys feel about it. But that's sort of irrelevant. This just says that we can choose which goes first in our leadership meetings. And so I think that's really it. Like, we can discuss in leadership, which is how we've been doing it, which contracts go on the consent agenda, or if they do or don't. But this just says that if we want to, we can put the consent agenda before the business agenda. That's all.
Thank you. Board Chair Brody, did you want to respond to that comment?
Yeah, because it has everything to do, they are connected. It has everything to do with it. If we're saying we're not gonna have, there's nothing else that we have ever debated, ever anything in the consent agenda. So if we are saying, contracts don't go in consent, moving the consent agenda around, really, that's the only reason why anything would come out of the consent agenda and be discussed separately is a contract. Like no other, everything is just being voted on in its entirety. So the contract is the probably the only reason we would need to be moving that agenda item up, because that's the only thing that holds it up. That's the only thing that causes issue is those contracts. So it is relevant. So I don't know if we're agreeing that we're not going to have, like, are we discussing that part? Like, are we going to have contracts in consent? Or are we just saying we just want to move the consent? Because you can move the consent up front, but you're still discussing it before the regular agenda items.
Board Member Walker, did you have comments regarding what was just shared? And then
Yeah,
Board Member Wilson?
Yes. One, I agree with Board Member Mills. The topic here is just moving the consent agenda, which I would agree with. This other topic I also would agree is a secondary topic, and so beyond moving this consent agenda, we can decide as a board, as a separate activity, someone else can modify this particular policy to add that limitation to it. You don't have to discuss it tonight. I am just trying to separate these two things. I do think it's worthy of discussion. I just think the discussion around, I brought it up as a discussion point. I don't think it needs to be resolved tonight. I just want to tee it up to say we should do something with it. And the appropriate thing, I think, is to address Board Member Mills' issue of, can we move to the top? That's a yes or no thing. And then secondarily, does someone else want to modify this particular clause to add that limitation about contracts, which we can do in policy? That's it.
Thank you. Board Member Wilson?
Yeah, I was just going to, Tyrone explained, I was just going to point out that Board Member Mills's point was sort of hijacked by Tyrone's point, and just clarify that, but Tyrone just did that, so. No question. No point.
Thank you. Board Member Mills, since you proposed this, what did you want as the next action item here, potentially after this discussion? I'm not quite sure how to move this forward. Or I don't know, Christina, you want to chime in?
I mean, my preference is to, bring it to the regular board meeting as its first reading and just keep it moving personally.
Yes, if the policy committee, the board members here agree, and it seems like they do, it will be moved to the first reading at the regular board meeting. First reading.
Okay. It doesn't seem like the board members agree, which is why I'm a little torn about what is the next step. But we can
But there's two
certainly.
parts. Right now, we're just talking about moving consent up, right? That's the only thing.
I mean, I want to clarify that there's one part. I don't like, this is a very specific thing that I wanted for very specific reasons. I don't necessarily think adding language about contracts is an appropriate thing to put in the bylaws. Like, that's a thing that we cover during leadership. So like, I would very much prefer that this one specific thing that does one thing be its own standalone thing.
Okay, so for my part, I will say I'm still finding this a little bit abstract, and it's still not landing for me fully, which is why I'm having a hard time even formulating any questions. But I will, I don't know, I'll ponder it further. But we'll proceed with the next step, which is the first reading then. Last item on our agenda is the proposed policy that Board Member Walker will share more about at this time.
Yes, thank you very much. The policy before you is language to add to our current list of board committee types, an advisory committee. Right now, the current policy has a couple ad hoc committees that have a short duration, and they make a report and they go away. I'm really, obviously I've talked in the past about HTAC, but really from that conversation, I kind of landed on the need really to more broadly just have an advisory committee. And the advisory committee can have students, parents, teachers, it would be stakeholders. And so this language is language that from my searching around this topic around the state, 2 school boards had some language on advisory committee that seemed relevant, Bridgeport and then Norwich. And a lot of this language came from that in terms of seeing, some areas that others had thought were relevant. And so essentially this talks about, if I can walk through this quickly, hang on, because I can't see real well, but I think I had it up. Well, I'll try to do it here. Thank you. Okay. It defines how the advisory committee can be created. I really want to be clear that the board has full control of an advisory committee, when it gets formed and when it would end. And that the advisory committee, is the second clause talks about, is directed by the board in terms of the task it's supposed to address, the members and how they're appointed, and that the board members themselves, as board members, we have control over who would be on the advisory committee. And then as you go down, this puts a little bit of meat on how this would work out, right? There would be some direction of service, the actual limitations, responsibilities. The big deal, based on the conversation that we've had in the past, is advisory committee. There's no illusion this is power sharing, or these are not de facto other board members. Advisory committees are entities that give the existing board advice. The idea of advisory committee is they answer questions that a board would have, or insights that a board would want to get more details on, right? That's their role. They provide that information. They may have a perspective on things, but that's all it is. We could take that as well. But the board would maintain all the decision-making authority that the board currently has. the idea to me comes out of this is that the board comes out smarter. And so that's why these bullets clearly talk about responsibilities, resources. If there's a timetable we define that. If there, any other details, we would provide it in terms of launching an advisory committee. And then, and that's what I said, that additional clause about the board possesses certain legal powers and prerogatives that cannot be delegated to an advisory committee. And there should be no illusion. And then it further kind of spells that out. The board has sole power. And then the last clause is one that I thought was smartly added, that basically says, if there's an advisory committee that is dictated not by us, but by some other entity like state board of education or something like that, then it's just saying that we would follow the guidelines of that outside entity. I don't anticipate that would happen, but again, in language, it just captured any potentialities. The whole idea of this kind of language is to kind of lay flat what an advisory committee is, how it would function, and what its limitations would be, and that the board still maintains control of, its functioning. Additionally, I had a couple slides that I wanted to share, but I can talk them because I want to keep it moving. Essentially, what I want to say is that when I looked through our policies, we have a policy for administration, right? That one of the policies that was on that list, 2220, in which the Board of Education encourages the superintendent, administrative staff to create and maintain appropriate groups such as councils, cabinets, and committees. This type of group, with the idea that it fosters good communication with staff, students, and public, allows staff, students, and public to have a voice in decisions that affect them, and then establishes effective channels of communication to the public, students, and district staff. And so I wanted to spike that out to say that the board has understood in the past the value of these advice-giving committees, and they want district leadership and superintendent and others to use them and to sustain these committees as a standing kind of thing. But it just somehow exempted the board itself from this kind of practice. And so what I'm really pointing out is that I think, just like we think is good for other entities, superintendents and administrators to have these types of committees for the reasons that were laid out in policy, I believe is good for us for the exact same reasons. Gives us advice, builds communication, builds trust, and gives folks a voice in decisions that we would make, right? Because really we are really the decision-making body, more so than the superintendent administrators. They really are the implementers and not necessarily the deciders of district policy. Okay, I'll stop there. There's more to share, but that's enough. Okay.
Thank you, Board Member Walker.
Yes.
Looks like we have a few hands raised. Start with Board Chair Brody, then Board Member Wilson.
So I think this policy is particularly dangerous because of the state we're in right now and everybody wanting to tell us what to do. So we're giving them a platform to do so. When I don't know about you board members, but I definitely have an advisory committee that consists of many different community members, students, etc., that gives me advice almost on a daily. That's our duty, to be connected, to be advised, because we're representing a city full of folks. But let me just go back, and I will not be more than 2 minutes. So when years ago, when we had, because I sat on many advisory committees as a parent, they were subject based, right? If it was the math textbook advisory committee, if it was the parental involvement funds, the Title I parent funds advisory committee, but we were advising staff members, district level, different people other than parents sat on various advisory committees, but we would be advising the staff member that has that responsibility in that, whether it was academics, the person who was in charge of our buildings, or whatever different category. Because in the end, we advise the superintendent. So I'm just trying to picture how it's going to be a body of people advising us, and then like we advise the superintendent, but others are advising us what to advise the superintendent. It's just mixed for me in that sense, because I've sat on many district-wide advisory committees, but they were the folks that reported to the superintendent, not the opposite in which is being proposed.
Thank you. Board Member Wilson?
I think you're muted if you're talking.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I muted myself. Thank you.
No, board member. I'm talking about board member.
Oh,
No, not
okay.
you, Chair.
Yep, I sure was.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so I guess I'm a little confused. I know we've had many committees in the past for various reasons. I'm not sure. I'm not really sure of the purpose of this, and maybe you can flesh that out a little bit more for me. A committee with no power per se, but a committee that is there to gather information and be connected to the community. We've spent a lot of time and effort ensuring that each one of our schools has a working SGC, along with PTOs and PTAs, to which as a board, if we want to stay connected and understand what's going on in our schools, and sort of get a firsthand account of what's necessary or what's needed, I think as a board we can do a much better job of being a part of these SGC meetings, and being available to our students, teachers, faculty, because all the people who we are asking to be a part of this particular committee would be a part of those of the school's SGCs. And if we are making the effort to make ourselves available to each one of these SGCs in their meetings, then we're not just putting together a committee of certain individuals, but we have a say from every single school. So I guess my long story short, my point is we have mechanisms in place to actually get that serves the purposes of this change that you're trying to. So tell me, what's the difference?
I'm hearing what you're saying. So my sense is each of those committees, like SGC, is a school-based entity. I mean, their focus is it does have a constituent group, as you suggested, and they're not without value, but their focus is on school-based issues, and they work with that school-based staff. And so there's a lot of SGCs we may have concerns at a district level, and SGC per se doesn't have that particular focus. I'm not saying that there's zero value. I'm just saying we potentially be asking the SGC to do an additional task for us, right? Like I'm thinking about examples where I've got smarter.
So
2024,
let me clarify.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm not asking the SGC to do a job for us. I'm asking us to go to the SGCs and listen and be an ear and be available to that SGC. As a board member, you have our ear. Whatever it is that you feel that you need to say to us, or that we need to know, you have a direct line to us. If there are administrative issues, then those things fall under the superintendent. So as a board, our job, just in my opinion, our job should be to be listening to those constituents and not creating committee on top of committee when we already have these mechanisms. We already have committees at each school that would provide the information and the direct line to our families, that this committee that you're trying to create. So that's, again, I'm just trying to see what questions can't be asked in the mechanisms that we already have.
I don't know if the SGC would not be what you suggested is a good thing to do. I mean, and so going to SGCs is a good thing, and talking to SGCs, and potentially an approach could be, as you suggested, divide and conquer. We would each cover a certain amount of SGCs, and we would have, I think East Hartford has some type of division amongst their school boards. I was going to check to see how East Hartford does their division of labor. The point is, if you had targeted schools where you would tune in, you could potentially accomplish some of the things that an advisory board could provide, right? I'm saying currently we don't do that. This proposal here gives you additional tool, right? I'm pointing out that we have told everyone else in the district that this idea is a good idea, right? And as board member Brody pointed out, the question that she was asking, I think, is how would it be valuable to the school board? The example that I am thinking about is we did budget cuts in 2024, and we cut out coaches, and it was a necessary thing to do that. At that point, I didn't know the impact of cutting out coaches, right, on a new curriculum program, Wit and Wisdom, that we had purchased. Now, as board member Brody said, I found someone that I knew, and we talked about it, and she helped school me on the impact of coaches, and losing those coaches, we lost consultants and in-house trainers for teachers that were going to do Wit and Wisdom for the first year, right? And what I'm pointing out, I did find that out. What I'm thinking to myself, gee, I would like to have had that information earlier. I would like to have had that kind of information in a way where, not that it would change the decision about do we have to trim coaches, but understanding that a gap would be there means that as a governing board, maybe we create some other supports, because we know this thing is not going to be met. Now, the leadership that I dealt with at that particular time didn't provide me with that information of the impact of the loss of coaches. Now, maybe it's because the school leadership thought they had it handled, or they didn't necessarily think that I was interested in knowing. But ultimately, it ended up being a gap that, to me, was not necessarily planfully addressed. And so that's just an example of one thing, but so I'm just providing that to say that's how I could see an advisory board being a source where I could say, hey, we're going to do this thing. What would be the impact in you guys' world? Or can you guys feed us back later with like, hey, how's this working out for you? Right. So that was a thought to answer your question about what an advisory committee could possibly do on a particular topic or issue. I think board member Darrell Ledger had a
So-
question.
Could I just
Yeah, I
respond
see
to
lots
that?
of
Just
hands. So just for a quick second, we'll go to Board Member Darrell Ledger, then Board Member Brody, and I think Board Member Wilson, you were trying to respond, so we'll just go in that order.
okay.
Do you want me to just let Board Member Wilson respond since they were having
Sure,
conversation?
no problem.
Appreciate it. Board Member Walker, I hear um, in your request here and what you're trying to get accomplished, the sort of you're looking for more information and you're trying to close that gap. And I'm simply saying, even with everything that you just explained, all of that, even as an example, all of that can be achieved by attending these SGC meetings, by attending and being available there to see what the schools are talking about, to understand what's important to that particular school, to ask questions if need be. So I just think that when we're sort of putting together, I don't want it to be lost that we put a lot of energy into these SGCs. We really do. And if we're just going to sit back and just say, hey, SGCs are full, we've done a good job, and we get our report every month about, which schools have a full SGC and whatnot, but not actually take advantage of those schools having functional SGCs, then our efforts, I think, are misplaced. So I'll just leave it there.
I guess, was it Board Member Darrell Ledger?
Yes,
Next?
Board Member Darrell Ledger, then Board Member Brody.
Thank you so much. So I wanted to couple things. I wanted to, but well, first, with regards to the statement that that Board Member Walker made with regards to coaches and cutting coaches, cutting those positions, and not knowing the impact that that would have had, and he would have, what we would have liked to know. I actually talked to a few coaches whose positions had been cut, and so I was able to hear about the impact just by communicating and talking to teachers, talking to individuals, and seeing what happened. What position did you get after your position, the coaching position, had been cut? So that's one thing. So I believe that having conversations with you know school personnel or employees, that is helpful. The other thing I wanted to say is I wanted to kind of echo what Board Member Wilson was talking about with regards to the SGCs and the PTOs, PTAs, having served on the SGC in Hartford Public Schools. That was very effective because as a parent, I was able to, have a voice. And also there were teachers who served on the SGC, and they were very vocal. And also PTO, same thing, being active. And the other thing I wanted to say is that with regards to asking teachers to join another committee when their focus really should be, you know, giving them the ability and the time to be able to teach. I think planning time would probably be something that would be more desirable. I can't speak for every teacher, but I know that there is a lot that is already on teachers' plates with regards to testing, with regards to classroom management, with regards to so many different things are happening. And, you know, new policies, just like the policy with regards to ICE. Teachers have to be prepared for that. It's almost like, you know, different kinds of trainings that educators have to go through, different policies that are coming down the pike every day. So I really believe that, you know, we have systems that are in place, and yes, visit the schools more, talk to, having simple conversations, and also creating opportunities for dialogue. But I think that another committee would not be it would not really be advantageous for us, or a good use of time. And I'm saying this as an educator.
Thank you. Board Member Brody?
What I don't want to do is tiptoe on the authority of the superintendent. That's definitely a concern of mine, because so while we listed all of those different groups, I don't know that we're talking about many groups. It seems like we pretty much know who we're thinking will be a part of this. And I'm thinking logistically too. And I don't want to I do want to big up, not I don't. I do want to big up Board Member Wilson's point in that the SGC route, because the SGC has parents, teachers, community members, building leadership. So we have these, all of those folks in a real body that is supposed to exist in every single school. But even logistically, I'm like, even our board assignments, we don't have I'm thinking like, who job will this be? Because this will be an undertaking. Because I don't know, I'm just still a little bit confused. And if I wasn't confused, I would land somewhere, because I'm just like, in what if? Because I'm having to make up what I think it would be, but it's gonna be a job, and it's probably gonna be Miss Santiago's job, who don't even have enough time to do all the things that we ask her to do. So I'm trying to get with you, brother. I'm trying to get with you, but I can't envision it. And that's what I'm struggling with, because these groups of people gathered in committees exist currently. But I do also want to say quickly that during budget season, and we have the opportunity to do it a little bit better. And maybe it'll be different. We're under new leadership, right? I never was confused. Like we had many meetings where we did talk about the impact. So our former superintendent definitely did that. But things are moving so fast because it's budget cuts on many different levels, many different departments, affecting many different things. During budget season, we just have to do a lot more homework, and we have to know what questions to ask. We have to know impact. Like, we have to step it up and give way more of our time to understanding exactly what's coming down the pike when we're faced with budget cuts. But we were made aware, we just couldn't keep up with everything because it just was so much. So maybe now going into this budget season, we kind of know what to ask and what to look out for so we can be better. In those hard decisions we have to be made aware of and eventually vote on. But I'm still not clear on how this shakes out. For me, I'm still like not understanding it totally.
All right. So, Chair, if I can respond.
Sure, go ahead. Thank you.
So I'll be brief. So one, as I envision it, to me, I'm not proposing any new meetings. To me, where I'd want to hear some feedback, I'd want to add additional voices to some level of the committee meeting and then our workshop meeting. This is not strictly just me individually getting information, although I benefit from that. The limitation is that we operate as a group. And so what I've also been trying to figure out is how can I have someone talk to the group, or how can we hear, because I know from the HTAC thing, my spouse is a teacher, so clearly there's interest in some teachers having a voice, and that's fine. But to me, what I've gained from this conversation is, yeah, that's one stakeholder. We have, to me, when I look at the arc of the 4 years I've been on this board, it's almost 4 years. What I keep reflecting is the amount of hours that I've heard administrators talk to me, and the structured formal setting where we can meet, we talk, we get back and forth, we share information. And what I see is I've listened disproportionately to administrators and a few vendors, maybe school leadership, and this very structured setting that we put out. We've provided very little time to actually hear parents' feedback on anything, or teachers, or students. And so in my head, part of what I'm trying to accomplish is also an equity thing. We can all have ways to find information. And I do agree that SGC is a great source. That body represents the kind of body that I can envision, right? Parents, teachers, administrative staff, that would be a good, kind of body to bounce things off of and learn from. I'm also, the only challenge I would give you as a board is, if we're operating as a board, we create for ourselves meetings every month, retreats quarterly or a couple times a year. We have workshop meetings. I'm just challenging you to think in your head, if adult lines of communication, who's people talking to us, right? I know we're supposed to go out and get community, but even if we got to community, I'm only asking, if there's about equity, why can't we provide other voices at those tables? It doesn't pinch on anyone's authority, because what I'm saying, at the end of the day, the people who have decisions, this in no way impacts anyone's ability to make a decision. And people will be happy or not happy with decisions that we're making. It's not about that. It's really, what I'm asking for myself is, can we find ways to add more equity to the voices that talk to us in the ways where we can have back and forth, right? And right now, I'm not finding ways where someone gets to talk to the board in a way where we get to have back and forth. We get to hear their experience, and we get to be enlightened as a group, because we operate as a group, okay? And so if it won't be this, I'm not sure if we do SGC, then let's have SGC talk to us at a workshop meeting, or have the SGC listen in on contracts and give some reflection, like, oh yeah, as we look at contracts, wow, these 20 we loved, these 15, these other ones are wonderful. Just some kind of back and forth where other voices can be at the table as we are trying to get smarter on stuff or understand things. Okay. I will leave that element, equity, and what I'm saying, I know I'm being repetitive, but there are people who get our time in this kind of way. No, but my point is, it's not about our job. It's not about us grabbing community. What I'm trying to say is that I can go get it and bring the community's voice here, but then it's me secondhand trying to tell you about somebody else's experience when they really deserve to talk to the board. They deserve that. That's all I'm saying. And so I'm just trying to figure out, can we give people what they deserve? And okay. I'm reading the commentary.
Thank you, everyone. Oh, there are comments. Let me just see if there's anything I should. Okay. But Board Member Darius Lodger?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So I'm trying to understand, because you said equity, and I would agree with you if there was no SGC. I would agree with you if there was no PTO or PTA. I would agree with you if there was no opportunity for teachers to, if teachers didn't have access to us. I would agree with you. You know what I mean? I think about different things, and I'm telling it comes down to communication. We have even had office hours, if you will, where I think they were called office hours, where we would go in the past, where we'd go to perhaps it was a restaurant or even at one of the schools and invite whether it's teachers, parents, whoever wanted to come and just talk and, freely, so we can hear from them. So that was something extra there. We also have public comment, and they may not, while I understand that folks may not be comfortable coming to public comment, they tend to, sometimes if it's something they've reached out to me, folks have reached out to me about concerns, and I bring that to the board. But I don't understand how equity is part of this when we have so many opportunities. There are so many areas. If anything, it's the young people who don't have, I don't say the young people don't have a voice, but we are as much of a voice as the adults, because remember, the teachers have unions. They meet with their unions. The paras have unions. Everyone, has these folks have unions where the union president will come and speak at every board meeting, just about. And so there is that opportunity for communication to take place.
I through the chair, I am so apologetic. Could we all give me a break of it's not just teachers. I know we read about HTAC. I know I'm really saying but I will end, because I don't want to keep persisting in this. What I'm asking us to look at is, over this next months and years, when we look at the number of meetings we sit in and the number of hours we spend and the voices that we hear talking to the actual board who get to influence the board itself, can we provide time for students, parents, and teachers to address us, to talk to us, for us to make time for them in our current meeting structure? Right now, we have workshop meetings, and that entire time is given to administrators when they don't particularly need that entire time. I know that's an additional meeting. I'm just also saying, without creating an additional meeting, okay? All I'm saying is that we can structure our own meetings. All these meetings for us, what I'm saying to the board here is every committee meeting and every workshop meeting is to inform the board. And all I'm saying, that's only the point of those meetings. We only make decisions at the monthly board meeting. So the other meetings are to inform us, to get us acclimated, to understand things. And all that I'm saying is that in those informational settings, it's only administrators and potentially a few vendors and stuff like that. I'm saying that we could also structure these meetings to provide time for other voices to address us. I'm even okay to say an SGC, have them address us sometimes. That's all. And because it's different from one of us going and hearing something and someone being able to influence and inform the overall board. And so I would, because that would be what an advisory committee would do. That would be my vision of advisory board is creating a vehicle for them to talk to the entire board in this kind of setting, whatever topic or need or interest, or we would task them and they will come back and report to us in this kind of setting. And so I could obviously have a lot of homework to do on SGCs. I guess I'll ask my colleagues, I guess, are we suggesting that SGCs talk to the board? Is that what I'm kind of getting from that? Public comments is a one-way thing. It's not a communication. That's what I'm saying, the equity part.
Board Member
Equity
Walker.
is their people.
Board Member Walker, I don't mean to cut
Yes.
you off. I apologize.
Go ahead. I'm done.
I just want to be clear. What we are saying is, well, at least what I'm saying is I understand exactly why you're trying to do what you're suggesting. What I'm saying to you is that you can find all of this information or to close that gap at the SGCs. Us as a board need to take more responsibility in going out into our community and gathering the information necessary to make proper informed decisions. It's not about necessarily having a specific entity having influence over the board. We are beholden to our community. If we are just sitting back and trying to create spaces for our community to come to us, you sit at our public, we're there at our we have our monthly meetings. You know what our public comment looks like. Unless there's a specific issue, a parent or a community member is not going to come to have a discussion about general things. But they do have these conversations at their SGC meetings. Those are opportunities to go, listen, and even if necessary, inform them of things that they need to know about. So, and it's not just one advisory committee made up of 10 people. You're talking about each school having one of your advisory committees where we can go listen and they have a direct line to us. And we don't have a say in those SGCs. It's all them. So we go, we listen, and we can learn a lot. So I'll leave it there.
Yeah,
Thank you all
Chair.
for the lively discussion. Did you have any final comments, Board Member Walker?
No, I think this has been a lively discussion. So I appreciate the board members actually persisting in this. And I certainly will do some SGC work this year, and I will talk to some of my board members about how we can be productive in doing that. The connection with the SGCs to see what benefit can be gained there, because it's all I'm trying to add is not just me getting information. Part of what I was trying to do here is I've had ways where I've gotten smarter, but me getting smarter is not the same as the board getting smarter. And so I'm trying to figure out, but I can work that out too. If there's things that I hear that are important enough to talk about, maybe I'll find a way to have it presented in this forum. That's one of the things that I was trying to accomplish is, since we operate as a group, somehow, if I find it's really wonderful and terrific, it has to get before the board if it's really going to drive any kind of policy change, right? So I will leave it there. It sounds like, yeah.
Yeah.
That's it.
So just to clarify, in terms of next steps, thank you again for all your time and comments. It seems like there is no next step on this policy for now. Is that correct? We're not doing a first reading because there seems like there's not consensus even among this committee. Am I?
Yeah,
Tyrone, you just muted yourself.
You're correct.
Yeah,
I apologize. I keep hitting the little button. It appears that there isn't a consensus to want to pass this, is what it feels like.
Duly noted. Thank you all for your time, and this concludes the policy committee meeting. See you all at the next meeting, which is the finance committee, right, Christina, next week? Which day is that?
Monday, November 10th, 5 p.m.
Monday, November 10th, 5 p.m.